Eileen, I'll turn the time over to you. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah. We will make do.
Thank you. And making sure that that happens statewide. And we all have elements where sometimes position is not the most important factor. It's really influence. And I've only been in Boise 2 years, and so I'm like, oh my. I'm like, just being really candid here. I'm like, I don't even know anyone. You know, how can I accomplish this? Well, you just kind of stop and you think about, who do I know? Who can help me? Look around and find out, you know, who are those key people that you know just sort of have the it thing that attracts you and that you might be able to learn from, develop, and make a key connection with. So as supervisors and managers, we definitely have to be creative in light of what we need to do. And influence, I think, is the most important factor. Going back to the question I asked about, can you really tell if someone's giving you a compliment or cares about you and sees you as an individual? We know those people in our lives. And we're going to engage employees, help them manage their own performance. So also think about who in your organization that sometimes all you have to do is give them a slight direction on what you need to have done, and they're off and they're running and they do it. And even if they make a mistake, it's quickly resolved. They learn from it and they just keep going. We love those people, right? And there are others, and there always will be in the organization, where they need a bit more guidance, a bit more clarity and instruction. And so we're going to learn how to align all of their performance with the direction you want to go. We're going to talk about when to step really close and give that guidance, that clarity, often, clearly, and when to just back away and get out of the way and let people do their great work. Okay? Does that sound all right? A lot to cover. All right. So let's get started about thinking about your own life. Think about a person that highly influenced you. Maybe it was a teacher, a parent, an uncle, a coach. Generally, these people come to mind fairly quickly. Maybe there was one, maybe there was several. I think about a high school teacher for the first one. I've had several, I've been fortunate. High school teacher, I was going through a really hard time. My dad had passed away. Didn't really, you know, you're 15, right? You didn't really deal with it for a long time. And I was just sort of disengaging and not becoming involved in high school like I was. I was kind of, my nickname was Busy Betty because I was involved in everything. Really liked people. And I just started withdrawing. I didn't even know it myself. He saw it. So he asked me just to come in, and he just started talking to me, asked me a few questions. Even at that age, even at that stage, I was pretty impressed with the fact that he noticed, right? And for a little bit, I don't think I'd completely noticed myself. I was just in, you know, survival mode. And it was really a turning point for me. I thought, wow, okay, I think I need to just kind of reshift this and start becoming a little focused. And I also thought to myself, which I thought was kind of dramatic at 15, but I thought I need to stop sort of, this is my story, it may not be yours, but I needed to sort of stop feeling sorry for myself and looking around me and thinking about the friends that I had and how I can just really engage and listen to other people. Lots of people were going through things. And that didn't eliminate what I was going through, but that was just a turning point. So how about you? Can you think of someone in your life that kind of influenced you? Volunteers. Awesome. And you're no longer in the same organization. Yeah. So that's, sometimes it's really nice to have somebody outside your current organization That's safe, right? Brainstorm with. Anybody else? Come on. How many of you play sports? Have played sports? Okay. All right. That just seems like a natural place that, we learn some of those kinds of things. Really kind of learn what we're capable of as well. But think about those elements that that person displayed that kind of influenced you, and how you might do that for somebody else. And sometimes, that person is in a position of authority over us, but the ones that we remember over our lifetime oftentimes are not. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So I did a little research about thinking about performance evaluations, those performance conversations that we're going to have. And I just quickly Googled, I love Googling, and I looked at what are some of the reasons that people leave their job. And so Forbes gave some of the top 7 reasons. So I want us to think about this. Number 1 was you've overworked and overloaded your best people with too many responsibilities. That can happen. Think about those go-to people, right? You can give them something and they'll take it. And oftentimes they say yes. Once in a while they have the courage to tell you no. But I'm a yes person. I want to do whatever I can to help my boss out. And if it means I'm already busy, I'm going to figure it out. And if I do have to ask her for a little more time, I'm willing to do that. But very seldom do I say no. That's me. I think you guys have to figure out what your culture is, who you are, what the expectation is. But sometimes we can overload our best people. You're a micromanager. Oh, nobody likes to hear that, right? Well, we'll just think about that one for ourselves. You're never around. I just want to be really honest. With everything on our plate now, that's a significant issue in my organization. So we sit down and we talk about it. We have those intentional meetings, and we're doing more agendas, and we're not just meeting for no reason, but we're really having to think about how much we're around for our folks. You're not in touch with how some of your hires or promotions are driving your best people nuts. I thought that was interesting. Have any of you been in a situation where you're trying to hire someone, you have a vacancy, you desperately need it filled, you do your interviews, and no candidate pops out? You're like, what do we do? If we don't fill it, what happens? You're behind. Yeah. Somebody's got to do the work, right? This doesn't go undone generally. So it means you just continue to burden the rest of your employees. If we want to look at it kind of in a heavy sort of way. What happens if we hire the wrong person? It can be the same thing on steroids, though, huh? Because then you have the employee not getting along thing to deal with, which is never really that much fun, right? So I thought that one was kind of interesting. You run terrible meetings. Okay, I had to chuckle this morning on that one, since last month you all did terrible, keys for running effective meetings. On the thing that Scott mentioned about the syndrome for accepting all your meetings, go to TED Talks. That's where that video is. It's great. You give your employees the big picture. You don't give your employees the big picture of where the organization or the department is going. How many of you consider yourselves to be visionaries? Okay. How many of us do our best work when we're just kind of getting the tasks in front of us done? So if you have a person, and I am this way, I'm a visionary. I'm becoming even more and more organized to get things done. I want things completed and not hanging out there undone. But I am always thinking down the road. What's going on tomorrow? I love where I am. I don't even want to promote. but I am, could I do that next job? What would it take to do that next job? Do I want to work that much? Since I hold two jobs, I love to work. But seriously, all those things. Is that good for my family? I'm always thinking down the road. What's the next project? In this deployment that we're doing for computers, we did a pilot court in Twin Falls, learned a lot. We're going to do Ada County here, starting training in May. And we're already planning for our third deployment, which is going to be 16 different counties across the state. So, I think that skill to be thinking ahead is really helpful. And if that's not you, and you tend to be really good at getting the task done for the day, team up with somebody who's a little more visionary. If you're visionary, team up with someone who's really good at getting the daily work done. Create your team if and when you can to have a variety of strengths. Okay, there's a chuckle there. Have you had an opportunity where you got to do that? Or do you have an opportunity where you need to do that?
Well, our team itself is a position that we're up to now. And
Cool.
So her and our other partner are all doing the same job, but we're all very, very different. And I think it's a really good mix of people.
Cool.
Pick the person and the organized one person and the thorough person.
I always say too, just cherish those times when it really clicks. Because we probably can also think about times when we've been on teams working with others where the personalities didn't really click so much. Everybody takes information in differently. They process different. How many times, most of you have taken the DISC now, right? I think about that stuff all the time. I'm personally certified in the Myers-Briggs. And I don't care what job I've had. I find new challenges every day, just this week, on dealing with different personalities. It's just always a challenge. And I feel extra obligated to apply what I've learned. But it's helpful. All right. Number 6 was, you never give people a sense of where they can go in their career. We are at an interesting time. How many have had training on generations? Okay. So generational differences. We've got baby boomers in the organization, which are generally about 54, 55. I don't have this memorized. I refuse to believe I'm in that generation, but I am. But not here. And then you have your millennials, your Gen Xers, and the really young people coming into the workforce. And we all, based on the time we grew up, where we grew up, what our ethnic background is, what our cultural background is, we approach work very differently. I work with people in my organization that are 70 plus. Right now, I don't think we have any 18-year-olds, but we have 20-year-olds. And so it's just real different. And one of the things they say about the Gen Xers in particular is they don't feel committed to stay with a company their whole life. The days of staying in the company 30 or 40 years, for the most part, it's kind of gone. My husband just retired before we moved here, and he was a parole officer for 31 years. I started out as a parole officer with him. I used to say I'd never date anybody I worked with. Now I never say never. So, and once we started dating, I went to another, just for health. And it worked out fine. But I couldn't even imagine doing that. And I loved being a parole officer. It was dynamic. I loved report day. I was kind of crazy because I liked the interaction with the people. I took a different job because I had a different opportunity to promote. I worked for the state. I had an opportunity. They asked me to come and apply for a job at the county, and I got it. Okay. But looking back, personally, I can't imagine, even though I'm a boomer, working for the same organization my whole life. But I can tell you, if they had kept me challenged, given me new opportunities, and helped me see where I can go in the organization, I probably would have stayed because I love the job so much. But we all make decisions. So think about your current work teams. Just generally ages, generally, what do you think really inspires them? And how do you keep really good people in the organization? Sometimes I sit in our organization and you watch people, I haven't done it so much here, but certainly in my last one, you watch people come, you watch people go, and I'm like, doesn't anybody care that that person's going to go? That's a huge hole. I'll miss that person. They're great personalities. And then they go. And sometimes we have gone 18 months before we've been able to hire just the right person for that position. And I'm like, why don't we do that? And granted, I think in government it's a little harder to say, oh, I'll give you a $1,000 bonus or whatever it would take. But still, you can inspire people to stay. And if nothing else, if you can, if you have that power, if it makes sense with what's going on, ask. They may turn you down, but ask. Because when they leave, they still know people in the organization, and they still have a story to tell. And I'd rather that story be, you know what, they really asked me to stay, I appreciate that, but I had to take this opportunity, than to have them leave and say, you know what, I feel like nobody even cares. Those kinds of, we all got our story. And finally, you communicate that you care more about yourself than your team. Ooh, something to think about. So those were Forbes' top 7 reasons why people leave their company. What's the most, and I'd like you to share on this, what's the most significant reason you stay in your job? Why do you stay? Kind of a family? Support your family. Very good. Good reason, right? We have obligations. Other reasons? Great. I love it. I love it. All right. So all of our employees have a reason that they stay, at least for now. And some of them may leave for all the right reasons in the world, right? They've got to support their family. There's nothing wrong with wanting a new challenge. And sometimes even when people around me have left and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a hole, I'll miss that person. I never put anyone down for trying to better themselves. You know what I mean? I mean, that's important. But all of those things going on in our organization creates our culture. And we want a culture, whether people come or whether people go, that people are challenged, people are seen and heard, realized for their talents. And even if your organization doesn't do that systematically across the board, you can do that one-on-one. Change the culture one person at a time. So that's fun. So when it comes to completing employee evaluations, my greatest challenge is, and most of us here have said we don't do that, but think about a time when you had to give an employee feedback. Okay? You had to sit down and have a conversation with them. And maybe it was a very positive one, which generally is easier, right? And sometimes we don't prepare for that moment as much, and I challenge us to prepare for it almost as much as you do for the difficult conversation. So come on in. Welcome. And if currently in your job you've never had to give an employee evaluation or sit down and have an employee conversation, think about a time when somebody did that for you. You know, same thing, really. Am I leading it? I'm receiving it. And the form today that we're going to kind of work through is going to be a great tool for that. So I'm kind of thinking about how to do this, and I've been doing most of the talking. So how about if we'll do nice big groups? How about if the 4 of you just turn around, join each other, and try to answer that question? We'll go ahead and use our back row again. And then actually, if you 5 will just kind of turn around and make a big group, that'd be great. I always love that cue where I say, let's take a few more minutes. Because for some of us, it's like, okay, let's go. And others, we need a few more minutes. So, but I appreciate that. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts. What are some of your greatest challenges? Let's start back here. Last row. Okay. So, can you? Right. So one of the things I learned to do well as a parole officer is we had to do a lot of training, right? And the more real you can make it, the better it is. And so I learned how to do a little bit of acting. And so I always loved playing the part when the parole officer confronted you and you were trying to manipulate him. You could start crying because I can shed the tears, which is funny because I don't do it much in my real life. And I was doing that in one of the exercises, and my husband's supervisor was in the class, and he was kind of a tyrant, to tell you the truth, right? But he's in the class, and he's just like, Eileen, does Pete know you can do that? And I said, no, and don't tell him. That was not effective with my husband, that's why I didn't do it, right? So yeah, that unexpected, how are they going to react? How am I going to prepare for it this way? How am I going to prepare for it that way? On those situations, you really don't want to go in cold turkey. You know, because maybe it's a very sincere reaction and they were taken off guard if it's, you know, kind of hard to hear feedback. But maybe they're a little bit more practiced at controlling the situation than we are. It's possible, okay? So when they're taken off guard, and maybe that's just their natural reaction. Maybe they'll totally get past it, but maybe cry, tear, emotion. This week, in the last couple of months, I have this employee, he's very outgoing. Everybody loves him, super talented. We went off to a conference, and at times during the conference, he just wasn't doing what I asked him to do, and we met ahead of time, we divided the sessions, I had it all organized. This is what we do while we're there, this is what we're looking for while we're there, this is where we help, this is where we want to help our faculty who are teaching, and he's in the back of the room either on his computer or sometimes he wasn't even present. So I thought, okay, wow, I really tried to be clear. You know, he's new to this. And so I just kind of, you know, I invited him in. How did you think it go? What were your sessions like? You know, just kind of warmed up the conversation. Then I kind of asked him about, can you tell me what was going on, you know, when you weren't at the plenary sessions? You were in your choice sessions, but the plenary sessions, I didn't see you. Everybody's all together. And it was interesting. I never had this reaction. He just goes, I said, I mean, it's like, okay, I can do silence, but, you know, there's a point. And I said, was there something else going on? And that's all he did. And I realized that's what he does now. That's the way that he takes in feedback. And he always goes around saying that you can't hurt my feelings. And it wasn't about hurting his feelings. I just thought, okay, here's a new one for me. I've never had that reaction. So I decided to kind of postpone and wait to a completely different time. Another time when we met, we were talking about something that really, really went well. And I asked him, I said, if you and I have to have a heart-to-heart, maybe you have to tell me something that's kind of hard to tell your boss. Maybe I have to say something to you that's kind of hard. How do you like me to approach you? And he says, just tell me the truth. Don't whitewash it. You know, don't muck it up. Don't think you're going to hurt my feelings. Just tell me the truth. And I think my next conversation is going to be, say, this is what I see happening. And that kind of takes some courage. You know, I mean, this is the reaction. So I need to know from you. So we just got to dig down, build some trust, and really figure each other out. Because sometimes it's not on the surface. Okay? And people will always challenge you. I don't care how long we've been a supervisor or a manager. So I really, really appreciate that. we'll have some tools here that will help us prepare for that conversation so that we can be super clear. For some people, this is natural. They just don't have a problem having these conversations. I have to prepare for them. Okay, how about right over here? Oh,
Culturally, I think our organization has, at least historically, been very notice. So if you have a performance situation that's negative, you're going to get feedback, you're going to get write-ups, you're going to get formal treatment. If you don't talk to people, you're doing well. As an organization, that's sort of been, we're very focused. We sell those fast groceries. That is our focus, and that is everything else is sort of on the side. But I think the fact that the four of us, who are all in the same organization, who are all, managers, supervisors, my world, more like consultants, I think the fact that we're here learning how to do this for those that we support is tremendous for the organization. Because I think even if this is taking a straw poll, none of us get a lot of that from our managers. We're where we are because we're willing to just take it and go and have the confidence to know we're doing a good job or taking feedback when we aren't. But I think the fact that kind of us as organizing from Winco are here, I think it's really good for the organization to say that, hey, maybe that way of doing it isn't as strong as maybe you have a little more formal feedback, or they've talked about they have, tried to do drive-by compliments in terms of supporting that. So I think it's a good, probably slow organizational, cultural change, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
awesome. I suppose in life it would be nice if we never had to read between the lines, but I think it's safe to say, you tell me, your company's investing in you. So that is a compliment. Absolutely. How motivating, right? Yeah. So, it may not be on the bullet point, but have they not, in fact, at least showed you that they see a future for you in the company? They're willing to invest in you. It's helping you see the future a little bit because you're self-starters and self-motivated. So you're going to take it and run with it.
And I think our track for most of the people who are managers in our company, let's say a store manager or store managers or assistant managers, there's 300 of those, and I think they have a very formalized process that the managers so it's been focused on those, where other areas maybe haven't been as much. So I think it's really good.
That's cool. That's exciting. How about this group?
Money and that evaluation, my hands are extremely tied, but I'm the one that got the break with them. No, I don't do this. Because ownership, there's two emotional impacts to that. So that's my biggest challenge. It's not talking to my guys, it's not saying you got that relationship. So I was a wedge drawn, I call it a head scraper.
Right. Was that the ownership's idea?
Realize that, so he stepped up and actually was looking at on Monday, talked to Wes at the state, we're excited, we're excited. We all feel great with it, there's more emotion, there's possibly,
Right. You said a couple of things that are interesting. Number one, there's a job opening out there, and no one from Winco is going to apply because they love Winco, right? But a couple of things, and I watched this in business a little bit. Even Bill Gates had to get out of the way. There was a time in Microsoft where what he could do for the organization had been done, and it didn't hurt. He could just go off and do philanthropy forever, right? But even he had to get out of the way. Apple was taking off. Microsoft was falling behind. And you'll see that in a lot of different organizations. Even great leaders, sometimes things change and they have to step out of the way. So kudos to your manager for recognizing that. And the hardest part is admitting it to yourself and then to others. So sometimes that can be kind of a frustrating process before you get there, but hey, at least you got there. So that's awesome. So I appreciate that. People to people, most important thing. What's a company if there were no people? And it sounds kind of funny, but it's like, you know, I hear a church is not the building. That's an address and a hollow shell. Companies are people. That's what makes the difference. That's what makes your products go to market. That's what makes, you know, return on investment. That's what makes employee engagement. And just in the little bit I could hear, these are some of the things I heard. We get feedback from our customers. Best kind, right? Because we've all been on the receiving end of great customer service and not so great customer service. Okay, I'm excited. Something to the effect of the boss has a vision, kind of placing the right people in the right place. So sometimes we might have to move people around. They might be in a position that they're not particularly good at, but if you moved them over here, they're terrific. You know, and just as an example, this colleague that I work with that I love, we hired someone to come in and do conferences, organize people, get the education they need, put it into place, because that's really kind of the way that we do the education in courts. We bring everybody to one location. We bring international speakers all over the place. And then sometimes we really believe in judges teaching judges, because not anyone can stand in front of a judge and teach them. Not anyone can stand in front of a doctor, right? Just culture. Not anyone can just teach a CEO. And so we cultivate judges to teach judges. And this individual in my organization, we really wanted an online learning specialist, but we're kind of told, no, not now, we need this instead. Okay, then we'll get this instead. Let's go with it. And lo and behold, we hire the educator, that's what I'm called, and he happens to have all these great online learning experiences. He was a teacher for 27 years, but he started doing blended learning with his high school students because he realized they learn differently than he learns. And so now we've just basically shifted him over and allowed him to do that full time because that was a better fit for him in the organization. And it means that a couple of us have to step up and still fill all the holes, but I think in the long run it's going to be better. This has been out for quite some time. Has anyone heard about the book Good to Great? Yeah, that's all about how the most effective organizations figure out how to put not only the right people on the bus, as they call it, because we don't want to be hit by the bus, right? We've got to put the right people on the bus, but we've got to get them in the right seats so that they can be as effective as possible. And if neither one of those two things are possible, then maybe they need another bus. So sometimes these critical conversations help people get to the place where they remove themselves. You know, you don't want to go to termination. A colleague of mine says, people in our organization only receive a termination after relentless feedback. No surprises. And so if we're having performance conversations, or if we're in an organization where we have to do a performance evaluation, the goal ought to be that what we say in that meeting doesn't come as a surprise. It's not a gotcha. Okay? Because we're coaching, we're talking, we're following up. So that when we meet together, we can say, remember the time when we talked about? Remember the time when this happened? And we were discussing what the fallout of that was? We're always leading back to some other conversation we've already had. And if we don't have any of those conversations yet, create it now, do the evaluation later. And I say that to this group because you're not required to do it in your organization on a timeline. So those are just some things to think about. Isn't that what we want? You know, I want the feedback as soon as possible so I can figure out how to change it. Okay, great stuff. So I have a handout for all of you. So I'm just going to kind of divide them up and pass them around. I'm not doing it super equal here, but we have more than enough, I think. There we go. So depending on where we are at in the organization, don't I remember, Beth, you're sort of human resources, aren't you? And not all of us are. Do you have some influence in the hiring process? Either you're on the panel, you get to help with questions. Okay, is there anyone who does not at this time? That's great. And even if you don't, here's some good tips. So these are really proven, but hire for talent. Going back to that conversation that we had about, you got a vacancy, you got to fill it. You just need a warm body. That's a horrible place to be. Hire for talent. Do your research on your background checks. Beth will give a class on that afterwards. All right. Set clear expectations. We have some tools to help us with that. And you guys, it's really, really important. So often, I think I communicate clearly. We're all different, right? And then I'll realize that the product I got from the individual wasn't not what I thought I said. So we need to go back in and check. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just that we all have our own experiences. We hear things differently. We communicate differently. So we're going to use a tool to set clear expectations and get agreement. So tell me what you think I said. Are we in the same place? Let's go. Teach to ableness. So I'm going to flip ahead here to the next. So this is actually really important. As supervisors and managers, we have to figure out when we're not getting the performance that we need, what is a person really able to do? And what are they willing to do? Okay? Think about our high performers. Chances are they got there because they're able. Maybe they got there kind of quickly, right? But they also probably got there because they're willing. So we have an individual who we're going, yeah, they're just kind of struggling. They're not really doing the things that, their team's doing. They're not performing as a team player. They didn't exactly do what I asked them to do, that kind of thing. Think about willingness and able. Because a person can be willing, but if they don't have the skill, the training, the knowledge, they may look like a low performer, right? And maybe they're willing, but they're not able. They don't have the tools and the knowledge yet. So if we were going to help them, we would get them the knowledge. If they're able, but they're not willing, that's a different story. They've got the knowledge. So sometimes in our organizations, we might see they just don't really get to it because they don't think it's a priority. They're not willing. Maybe they think it's beneath them. In my job, just as an example, you have to be willing to do anything from stand up, have your crud together, and instruct in front of a judge to clean up after their coffee cups because they're too lazy to pick them up themselves. Okay, please keep that here, okay? But honestly, and I went through a transition too. There are times when I thought, okay, I have a college degree and I'm passing out handouts. But you know what? It's part of the job. And we all have things that aren't the most exciting in our job. So as supervisors and managers, it's really, before we have any kind of conversation with somebody, it's good to think about, what am I really seeing here? And can I answer those questions? Do I know if they're really able? Maybe I need to explore that first. Do I know if they're willing? So it really is an important factor. Anything come to mind when we think about that? See an example? Nothing that happened in our organization. You can share. Wow. Right. Not easy, is it? Do you happen to see this individual since you let her go? Do you have cross paths in your personal lives? Okay. Right. every once in a while it's not a good fit. You know? It's just not.
It's a lot harder though when it's for when they're willing.
Yeah.
That's a lot harder. Oh yeah, you say that. Okay.
And there was not another seat on the bus that fit. See? Yeah. Right. And so sometimes we give those employees good recommendations, provided, you know, when we're asked they're applying for a job we can think that they can do. There's things that we can do for folks. But it's not easy. I mean, and sometimes, you know, as supervisors and managers, when we lose sleep at night, it's over some of these kinds of things. Because you care about people. And other times, you're happy they're gone. All right. Give frequent feedback. This is one of the most powerful skills that I learned that's quick and easy. And so I've repeated it ever since. So let me just say, if I were to say to you, Julie, Julie, you did a great job on that project. Thank you. How does that feel? All right. Let's try this. Lorena, you know what? I really appreciate the great job you did on that project. You had it well organized. You knew all the questions the audience was going to ask. And then when they tried to ruffle you, you just kind of stayed calm and you had your research done and you were able to answer their questions. Great job. Okay? And the key is, yes, compliment, right? But the more you tell me about what I did right, the more I know what to repeat next time. And I'm not left to guessing. You know, and you guys are self-starters. You probably could kind of guess what went well and what did well. But think about the people that are just starting. And do you have anybody on your team who is not comfortable even receiving positive feedback? That can happen too. They don't know what to do. So put it in the brain. It's actually a learning thing. The more specific you can tell me what I did right, as well as what I need to improve, the more likely I'm going to be successful. So just a couple details. You don't have to go overboard. They'll go, yeah, they're just making it up. No, you know, but give them some detail. It's good. Remove obstacles to performance. Sometimes in some of my drive-bys with people, I'll just talk and I'll kind of hear things. And I'll say, okay, what right now in that project do you kind of need to have removed quickly? You know, find out what their obstacles are. They may not come to you with them because if they are self-starters, they're just going to try to figure out how to plow through it. So, but find out if there are obstacles to be removed because that's our role as a supervisor and manager. Because oftentimes those obstacles are personalities. They come from someone higher in the organization. They come from another work unit that person doesn't necessarily feel empowered to handle. The other thing that happens is maybe it is something they could handle, and they just need to talk it through with somebody and sort of have permission to go with what I was thinking. You know, I'm on the right track. All right, I got it. Develop and recognize people, their abilities, and their accomplishments. Who talked about, was it you, David, talked about kind of doing, called drive-bys where you give compliments on what they're doing well? Tell the rest a little bit about that.
Well, that came out where else do opinion surveys, so all the employees do all their opinions on us, and they have certain questions they're asked, and comments. So one of the big things was they weren't recognized. So basically, drive-by compliment is while we're walking the warehouse and everything, that see somebody performing something, doing well at certain things, is recognize that and let them know that they're doing a good job at whatever it happens, whether it's receiving, picking, talking, whatever it happens to be, but just basically recognize it and inform them, and hopefully there's other people around too that make them feel better about themselves.
Let them know they're on the right track. Yep, they see me. I like that. All right. I want to give us a tool to practice with, and it might be a little bit easier to kind of do it in groups. So we barely got 2 pages here, so I'll try to. Beth, could you help me? Could you just kind of hand those out? So as we've been talking about kind of giving that positive feedback, this is a tool we'll take just a little bit of time to practice with. It really is one that when you get back to your workplace and you have a few moments, give it some more thought. Pull it out before you have to have a conversation. Are there any more?
I forgot mine.
Aww. Say, don't you see me? So Beth, do you have an extra? Oh, okay, great. See, they got the color, just because of that, they got the color copies.
See, I got you fancier ones. You're welcome.
I make them feel special. All right, so just quickly think about a common task that you would have your employees do. Something very simple, very common. You can go ahead and write it in the blank if you would. Does everybody have a pen? There are some up here. We're all good? Think about writing it using an action verb, because action is the key to what you want them to do. So if it's stock shelves, orderly, clean, or according to the guideline that we have set out, the action word would be stock, right? That's pretty easy. So in my organization, I might ask someone to identify people that you want to help plan out an education event, gather them together, and set out a series of meetings that will lead up to planning up until the next conference. So identify people, organize the meeting schedule, there's 3 of them, and organize the content that will help you put that great education event on. So sometimes they're simple, sometimes they're a little more complex. And continuing to move towards specificity, list 2 or 3 criteria, characteristics of what that task would look like if it was really done well. Our opportunity to be as specific as possible. Okay. Go ahead and continue down, if you will, to include any resource that they might need in order to complete that task, including training, including physical items, including knowledge, examples, mentor, feedback. What kinds of things might get in the way of them being successful? A barrier, an obstacle. Okay. I'd like 3 people just to kind of share what they have. Doesn't matter what they are. We're just looking for 3 examples. So volunteers. Excellent. Yeah. Can I stop you right there? This is great because you're talking to someone who doesn't know your world. So you said a couple of things that I thought were very specific and probably helpful. 70 cubes per board. That's kind of specific, huh? I don't even know how big the board is. I don't know how big the cube is, but there's a tie there. What was the first one you said? Keep going. Cross type? Cross tied. Okay. Okay. Is there an example? You just follow what's already been done? Is it that kind of thing? How would I know if I was cross tying correctly? Okay. I actually have a picture based on his description. That's good. Keep going. Thank you. Excellent. I heard you say something earlier in your share is they'd be trained to do it, right? Okay. Do you usually team them up with somebody or somebody just show them and then they go do it? Sure. So how often have we walked into a job and we didn't have that much instruction? You just sort of kind of left on your own to figure it out for yourself, right? And in some cases, you may not be able to meet your quotas, your goals. It could impact income. It could impact safety. So it's obviously really important. Does anybody have something to share that was real different? Thank you. You guys are quiet. How about Tracy? Okay. 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 So you have ways that you can kind of help them anticipate and make their job a little easier. Do you ever have a time when email's down? Have you run into that? What'd you say? Very seldom. That's good. Getting better and better with that. Okay, great. Keep this right beside you as we move into kind of the final stage of what we're going to be reviewing. And so what we've put together here is a document, and I was going to ask my new best friend Beth to help me again, if you would please. Yes. So this is a performance conversation log, and I'll have to tell you, I thought I'd take a little chance, and after I was in my current job about a year, and I felt okay because they'd actually already offered me a promotion, but I actually took this to my boss, and I heard somebody saying in the organization, sometimes you have to say, what am I doing well, and what should I stop doing? Who said that? You know? And that was the kind of feedback. Well, it made me think of this. So I have this performance log. I've used it. I've trained it in other organizations, but I wanted some feedback from my manager, my director, as to how I was doing. So I asked her if she would fill this out for me. And she said on one condition. And my heart kind of went, you know? And she said that you'll do it for me too. And then I really got a pit in my stomach, you know? And she's super duper open, and I really have a high level of trust with her. But you really think about what it is I'm going to say that she really does well with specificity. That was interesting, right? And with that is, what do I need to stop doing? Okay? So that's kind of hard. But this is a great feedback tool. And kudos to her for saying that. And it wasn't that she wasn't going to give me any feedback. She just said, you know, this goes two ways. We can all be better at what we do, and we can learn to work with each other even better. So let's do it. So that was good. So this is just an opportunity. You know, slideshow looks like this, but following on your own handout, think of some positive performance and accomplishments that employee has made. Or if you don't do evaluations, it's okay to think about positive accomplishments you've done that you're kind of proud of. Right? We don't often do that. We don't compliment ourselves. So, but we know when we've done a good job and you felt like that was really good and it worked. You know, maybe that's great job, Eileen. Maybe that's great job, team. Usually team. So think about something. So if you're comfortable, you can leave this blank, but if you're comfortable, write something down for yourself. In the last year, what have you accomplished that you thought was good work for the company, good work for you? And fact, what I think I'll do is I'll go ahead and review this at a high level and just give you guys some quiet time to work on it for yourselves. The last thing that we're going to have too is I think many of you have the form that your organization likes you to fill out after you leave. Is that still the case? So this really, I would think, would give you some action steps for that directly. So, so as we think about our own things that we've accomplished this year that we're kind of proud of, what kind of desired performance improvement or development would you like? I would hope that kind of being here is one, right? More management training, a variety of items. Is there anything else that you would like your organization to provide for you? You know what? Sometimes it is money. Sometimes it is a little pay raise. That's it. Be honest. You don't have to show anybody this after you leave unless you want to. I know. We'd be jumping, wouldn't we? I hear there's a general manager position opening. All right. Any obstacles? Just as you remove obstacles for your employee, there might be an obstacle your leader needs to move for you or help you with. Next, be as specific as you can. What need or support do you need from your supervisor and manager that would make a difference? And as good as thinking about these things are, and kind of visualizing ourselves having that conversation with that individual, that's important to think through. But without these next key steps, they may just be chasing butterflies, like Scott said. You know, it may not come down to action. So specifically, what actions or commitments do you have towards these goals? So if you're going to be asking your supervisor for some kind of support, some kind of development, what are you willing to commit to in order to make that happen? Because if you say this out loud, a good supervisor or manager will follow up with you to make sure that you've done it. And then here's kind of the tricky part, I guess, right? So just like you've committed to some things, you need to ask your supervisor what they're willing to commit to. Because this is a mutual agreement. It's in a mutual accountability. What message will it send if my employee asks something of me, I invest time with them, and then I don't follow through? I'm too busy. What message does that send? So this is an opportunity to kind of put it on the table, I think. And then the last part is not relevant. Sign it and date it. I think the signatures may have gone to the other side, so they are on the other side. Sign it and date it. It's sort of just a way of codifying your agreement. You know, it's like a shaking of hands. I've committed to you to do this. You've committed to me to give this in return. It kind of just makes people accountable. And if you have to, set a goal date to review it. It's really important. Because how busy are we, right? All the good intentions in the world, but if we don't commit to that time, date, put it on the calendar, it probably won't get done. Okay. I think it depends on your organization. So in my organization where we don't have anything formal, with a new employee, I might do this quarterly. Some people will say monthly. I think that just depends. I think you have the opportunity to do what's good for you, depending on where you work, how much detail it is, what's going on. Maybe you have a new employee training program that they go through, and this is a nice milestone to wrap that program up and let them know, oh, I'd still like you to go back and review this, or, you know, you've really passed it with flying colors, let's sign it and date it. It's just these little formal things sometimes that are really significant. They can pop this in their personnel file. I keep my own personnel file. I put mine in there. So it's really, really up to you what seems to make sense. Now, if you do these on a regular basis, and you do, I've done them where I do them quarterly to prepare for the yearly evaluation that I had to do. Then we pulled these out, we quickly reviewed them, and lo and behold, there were no surprises. Look at all these things you did really good this year. And then you committed to work on this. This is how I saw you do that. And this is where I still think we should try a little harder, and that's okay. I think I need to pay a little more attention to breaking down those barriers and getting you there. We'll recommit to that. But there are no surprises, and it makes it super clear. You do this once or twice, and that employee is going to have a little bit more courage to ask for something they really need. The really cool thing is I've not used it enough in an organization that, you know, it'd be like a 5-year span or something like that. But the consultant that shared this with me basically said, I don't have to do any work anymore. We have that date we've agreed to. They come, it's all filled out, mine's filled out. Our employee evaluations take about 15 minutes because people know what to expect. And they know that they have the ability to ask me for what it is they need to be successful. So that's kind of the power of this tool. So what questions do you have? What challenges might you face trying to use something like this? Should have brought my Dutch Brothers coffee gift certificates. I mean, it's something to think about. You have a lot to think about when you think about where you're at, what's going on, how you do it. Awesome. I like that idea. Thank you. And if you need to simplify it or change it up to work for you, absolutely. Do whatever you need. A tool is a tool. Shape it, form it, make it your own. Okay. Well, I'm going to stick around. I wanted to give you all a few minutes to kind of work on either this a little bit further or on your employee form that they would like you to do. Do you guys all have copies of that with you? Do you need one? Oh, you log on. That's right. I was told that. So, well, thank you, everyone. I hope that these reflections today on managing our employees, helping them strive to be all that they could be and align that with the vision and mission that you have as a leader as well as your organization has. I hope you have a few takeaways. So thank you.